I met a Hindu woman one time, and as we were talking, she shared with me that much of the suffering that was in her life was due to past karmic debt, sins of another
Mm.
life.
Hmm.
And I remember just listening to her, and I felt such sympathy for her. What would you say to a Hindu woman like that? Say you're in an elevator with her, or maybe you're on a train ride with her, and she divulges this information that I'm going through a lot, and it's probably due to the past karmic debt of another life.
I
What
would
you
ask
say?
her, why does she think that's true? And what evidence does she have for that?
Hmm.
Because as I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if karma works as I think it does, in this life, I'm paying for whatever I did in the previous life. And in the next life, I'll pay for whatever I did here. And if I experience moral improvement, I'll live better and better in subsequent lives. The problem, there's two problems with that. Number one is, in my first life, what was I serving my karma? I had no karma. So how did that happen? And then secondly, it would seem that this kind of process would require someone like God in order to keep track of it and in order to put people in the proper life based on perfect justice for in their next life. It would seem like you would need a mind like God. You'd also need a moral standard like God to say, oh, Frank, you did wrong in the previous life, so in the next life, you're going to be a cockroach. Okay. There would have to be a being like the God of the Bible in order to keep track of all that, an all-knowing being who's infinitely just. I don't see that in Hinduism. It seems like they're stealing that sort of God into their system, even though they don't believe this God exists, in order to make that work. What would you do? What would you say?
It was very fascinating conversation. And I remember I just shared with her, I didn't really deal with the problem of karmic debt, like from another life. I just dealt with the idea that grace was available to forgive all sins.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
but it just left me thinking of just the burdens that her and many others feel in this life, thinking, man, it must have been something I've done in the past. It must have been part of the reincarnation cycle is why I'm suffering today.
I know they think that. I'm just kind of wondering why,
Right.
Anil. I'm like, what? Why would they think that? I mean, they've been taught that. I'm saying from a evidentiary perspective, why would they think that? Because it would seem to imply you'd need a being like God to keep track of all that, and a moral standard like God's nature in order to say, well, you did wrong in this life, now you're going to go in the next life, or you did better in this life, so you're going to be at a higher level in the subsequent life. It would just seem like it would need a being like God for that to happen.